Okay, we'll keep practicing some problems here. I've got 3 more problems on this video that they won't work out quite as nice as the last one. So again, with each problem, I'm going to ask myself, do I want to solve by factoring or solve by square roots? And I noticed this problem does not have an x in the polynomial, just an x squared. So I want to start by getting the x squared part, just this, by itself so that I can square root. So I'm going to start the problem by dividing by 3. So x squared equals 3. And then again, if it's x squared, we should get 2 solutions. So I'm going to do the inverse of squaring, which is square rooting. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. And since the square root of 3 doesn't have any other factors besides 3, this is already in simplified form, so we'll just leave it x equals plus or minus square root 3. Square root 3 is a decimal, 1.7-ish, so we're going to leave it like that because we want to be as exact as possible. All right, let's talk about the next one then. So again, I don't want to square root yet. I want to wait until I can get just this x squared part by itself. So I'm going to undo this problem by doing inverse operations. So I'll start by subtracting 4 from both sides. So this cancels and I get negative x squared equals negative 18. And then again, I can't square root until I have just this. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. So x squared equals positive 18. And then I want to get my 2 solutions, and I do that by square rooting. So I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 18. But this is where we have to be careful. We want to make sure that we've simplified each radical. And if you notice, this number 18 has more factors other than just 1 and 18. So I'm going to try to figure out the factors and see if anything will come outside of the radical. 18 is the same thing as 2 times 9. I'm going to keep the number 2. And 9 is 3 times 3. Or if I wanted to, I could have kept that as a square. So I have x equals plus or minus the square root of 2 times 3 times 3. And we said that since this is a square root, I'm looking for groups of 2. I have one group of 2 of 3's. So this 3 is really the same thing as 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So it puts a 3 outside. So the way that we're going to write this is positive and negative 3 square roots of 2. Notice that the 3 is between the symbols and the radical sign. We don't want to put it out here because then it looks like 3 plus the square root of 2. And we know that whatever comes outside the radical is multiplied times the radical. Okay, on this one, again, I want to get this x squared by itself. I know that I can't solve by factoring because there's no x term. So I will start by adding 73 to both sides. So this cancels and I get 9x squared equals 64. Then I want to still solve for x, so I got to get this by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 9. So x squared equals 64 divided by 9. And then I know I need 2 solutions, so I'm going to square root both sides. So I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 64 over 9. And as I was writing this and talking about it, many of you probably thought this is nice because we know what the square root of 64 is. That's one of our perfect square numbers. And we know what the square root of 9 is. So I can write x equals positive or negative. The square root of 64 is 8. And that's in the numerator, and the square root of 9 is 3. So my answer is positive 8/3 and negative 8/3. These are the 2 solutions that if I were to go back up here and put 8/3 in for x and work this out, I would get negative 9. There's only 2 numbers that make this a true statement, 8/3 and negative 8/3.